Discover the charismatic intuitions of Saint Magdalene. From her memoirs, offering a glimpse into her interior journey. These intuitions were written between 1814 and 1816, when Magdalene was 40 years old and already a foundress for 6 years. Magdalene's writings provide a gift. That is the birth of the charism and how it took root in her. These experiences occurred between 1795 and 1798, when she was 21 to 24 years old, under the spiritual direction of Don Luigi Libera. During this intense period, Magdalene was undergoing a crisis and living the need to understand what God wanted from her. These intuitions aren't just moments in time. They're threads woven into the fabric of Magdalene's spiritual journey. They're not mere entries in a diary, but reflections from the depth of her soul. First experience, operative charity. Magdalene enters a church. It is 20th July, 1795. Memorial Day of Saint Jerome Emiliani, patron saint of abandoned children and orphans. It is not easy to understand what the priest may have said during the explanation of the Word of God and what Magdalene may have perceived. We know, though, that it was a reading taken from the book of Tobit, where we read that he was faithful to the law and he was doing works of charity, not without difficulties and sufferings. In his life, prayer, fast, works of mercy were constantly present. We understand these are also the works required of the believer. Prayer, work towards God, fast, relationship with created things, works of mercy, relationship with others. Chapter 12 is the heart of the book of Tobit, where his situation is described and what happens to him is explained. Magdalene speaks of this experience in the memoirs.
During one of those first years, while attending the Mass, as the priest read some scriptural text taken from the book of Tobit, I felt a strong inner impulse to dedicate myself to works of charity, and I resolved to do so. It was not because I already had a clear idea of what this work would be, but I was thinking of the good I would be able to perform at that time.
At that moment, Magdalene understood the urgency to engage, not only personally, but also as an institute in works of charity. Furthermore, she understands better what was not clear when she was at Carmel. In fact, at that time, she was considering as temptation her urge to engage herself in preventing sin, since she was wondering why the Lord could not have saved souls by means of her prayer without her direct involvement. Where was then the power of God? Now Magdalene discovers that what she considered temptation was instead her vocation. Discovering one's vocation does not consist in understanding what to do, but whom you are, to discover God's project for you. Second experience, merciful charity. This experience of Magdalene was from Miserere during a moment of prayer. Don Libera had taken great care to nourish Magdalene's spiritual life, guiding her to prayer and to the spirit of prayer. In particular, he asked her to do frequent visits to the Blessed Sacrament. It is in one of these moments that Magdalene tastes the psalm Miserere because she understands that the love of God forgives sin. The interiorization of the Miserere is a very important moment for Magdalene. I will teach transgressors your ways. In Magdalene, this is the maturing passage of her ideal.
On another occasion, as I recited the Miserere, on reaching the verse, I will teach transgressors thy ways, I felt urged to teach Christian doctrine to my fellowmen, and thus I began to explain it every Sunday to our maidservants, whom I could not send to church.
If the love of God for me is so great, then I will teach it to others. It is from this expression that in her has origin the need to instruct her neighbors, so to make God's great love for man known. Third experience. Universal and missionary charity. The third insight is very similar to the fourth. It could be defined as the experience of the opening up to the universal love. Magdalene has her strongest experiences within a liturgical moment, particularly during the Eucharistic celebration while listening to the Word of God. This third experience comes from listening the Word of God from Gospel of St. Mark, 16:15, where the verse goes as Euntes in universum mundum. And Magdalene explains this strong inner experience in her memoirs.
Almost every time I heard during Mass the Gospel text which reads, Euntes in universum mundum, without knowing why, I was deeply moved and filled with consolation. Although I do not cry easily, my eyes would fill with tears.
Magdalene is very attentive to her interior moments, gift of the Spirit. Each time Magdalene listens to the verse, Go into the whole world, she is deeply touched and consoled. This missionary impulse, ad gentes, that she kept in her heart throughout her life will become a charismatic reality for the Daughters of Charity in 1860. The third experience of St. Magdalene help us understand two aspects. First one is Euntes, means go, after having had an experience of God and faith, and second one is universum mundum, which is universality of mission. What does this universal love mean to you? How am I practicing it? Fourth experience. Divine glory.
Same happened when I attended those Masses, having the divine glory as theme, and for which I had since then always a great attraction. The very mention of the divine glory would suffice to touch my heart deeply.
Magdalene feels that divine glory is the ultimate goal of her apostolic activity. This kind of experience is repeated many times, and it expands and completes the experience of God alone, leading Magdalene to a solid spiritual balance of life. The goal of her institute, then, is the glory of God, which is also that of every other institute of apostolic life. For Magdalene, her institute cannot have other goal than this, the glory of God, and she feels it so deeply that it leads her to the maximum offering of self, one could say, to martyrdom. We can read this in that phrase of her when she says, I would have turned my blood into gold if I could, to prevent sin and to see to it that men may be saved. It is a simple expression, but it implies the total gift of self to the shedding of blood and the totality of the offer of her life to others. How do you find the glory of God in your life? What are the difficulties you encounter in revealing the glory of God? Fifth experience. Look and do likewise.
During Holy Week, while reading in a small meditation book the verse, In spis et fac secundum exemplar, I experienced an inner stirring, so strong that it remained with me for several days. I felt urged to follow the crucified Christ, but without understanding anything in particular.
With the fifth experience, we arrive at the climax of the charism, of her experience of love at moment of the maximum manifestation of the Father's love, to what she will call as the crucified love. This experience is manifested in two moments, 15 years apart, one from the other. First moment, that is during Holy Week, 1795, while making a course of spiritual exercises, she is struck by the verse of Exodus, in spes et fac secundum exemplar, and she feels stimulated to follow the crucified Lord. She lives this experience as a strong interior motion, but purely as a personal experience, without any idea about a foundation. In the second moment, it happens before going to Venice, 1811 or 1812. That is, she is already a foundress. This time she discovers the crucifix to be the inspirational source of the rule that his virtues will characterize her institute. How does the charism of love live in me today?